Hi, welcome to another episode of Botox and Burpees. I'm your host, Sam Ree, and I have a very special guest with us today, Teaganne Finn and her standard poodle. What's his name again?
It's Bruce.
Bruce,
Bruce.
yes. And Teaganne is senior writer at Morning Chalk Up, which covers CrossFit and CrossFit News as an outlet. And I really thank you, Teaganne, today for coming in or meeting with me today and talking a little bit about yourself, about CrossFit, about where do you think CrossFit's going, uh, your personal involvement and your perspective as a journalist covering CrossFit over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I know you've been working for Morning Chalk Up for a couple of years. Tell me your background first. Like, how did you start in terms of your career, education? What got you into journalism and writing?
Yeah, so I'm from upstate New York, the Finger Lakes region, so I'm used to some brutal cold weather. But I went to Hobart William Smith colleges in Geneva, New York for my undergrad. I studied like writing there and I did a lot with the local newspaper there. And so I kind of just fell into writing, to be honest. It just came naturally to me and um, I really enjoyed it. And so then I moved right into grad school. I moved to DC and I went to American University for my master's in journalism. So I moved right to DC, kept going with school. Um, and then outside after I got done with school, it was like a year program. So after that year, I ended up getting a job at Bloomberg. It was Bloomberg Government at the time, but now it's Bloomberg Industry Group. And I covered agriculture. I covered like all things like farm, country, farm subsidies, like a whole range of topics. And so that was like my first real uh, journalist job. And it was a really a great job. And then I kind of fell into working with the breaking news team at Bloomberg LLP, the main Bloomberg that people know about. So I started working there and did a lot with breaking news, much different animal than a a beat writer per se. So it was more fast, fast hitting news, very short stories, kind of a much different role in journalism. And then I got hired at NBC. And so I worked at NBC for about a year. And then unfortunately, ended on bad terms with that job. I was accused of plagiarism. It was a whole really, really rough situation for me. But I was an adult and I took accountability and it was the life-changing moment for me to realize that, um, I had made mistakes. I was lacking oversight in my job, and I picked myself back up and honestly transitioned to CrossFit in that time when I had lost my job and I got my L1. I started coaching. I was like trying to find something to fill the void of being unemployed, being fired, trying to figure out what to do with my life. And so I started coaching and it really got me through some really, really difficult times for myself.
So,
And so I started coaching and
mm,
then I applied to Morning Chalk Up. And so whatever has happened to me is very public. People can Google me and look it up. So it's all out there. And they gave me an opportunity to interview and to talk with them and talk with the editors and bring me onto their team. And so I was able to join as a freelance writer like I am now. But I started off slowly and took took a year to really build back some confidence as a writer and um yeah, so it kind of brought me here now, and so now I'm been at Morning Chalk Up for going on 3 years at this
hmm,
point. So,
that's that's
yeah.
a really interesting story. I think all of us can relate to times when we've been really down, probably almost devastatingly down, I would imagine, and being able to find something to keep going with. Was it was it finding CrossFit that really sort of helped you sort of not focus on all the crazy stuff that was going on, or was it something else at that time?
Yeah, I had been doing CrossFit. I started doing CrossFit in God, probably like 10 years from 10 years ago now. But
Oh, wow. Okay.
at the time, was a member of my gym, and it was a community that I was really in, and I was still really into CrossFit, but I had never thought about coaching. I lived a very traditional 9 to 5 life. Like that was kind of it. And then, obviously, with a lot of more downtime, I was like, okay, why don't I get an L1? Maybe start some sort of stream of income for myself. And so I started coaching, and it was
Mhm,
a real outlet for me in that I felt like I had purpose again. Obviously, it was a huge loss to my
mhm,
confidence and my life,
mhm,
and so
mhm,
to just be able to coach a couple classes a week
mhm.
um, was a slow build up to having confidence again.
Where did you start coaching? And because you're now at CrossFit Union Square in New York
Yeah,
City.
yeah. I
And
I started in DC
uh-huh,
at CrossFit Balance,
uh-huh.
and that gym is sadly no longer, but, CrossFit Balance was, like, the best community. It was, like, 3 different locations within DC, and I had bopped around to all of them, and so the one in Thomas Circle is where I started coaching, and,
Mhm.
um, it was a wonderful time.
And then you moved to New York at some point.
Yeah, and I
And,
moved to New York in 2022. Yeah.
okay. And then I know CrossFit Union Square is huge. It's a very big place, I would assume.
Yeah, it is a big community. It is a very, um yeah, my path to we can talk about that. So I, moved to the city, and I had some friends who started at CrossFit Union Square, and I, um, was went to a class, and I was immediately humbled by how good their athletes were, and I was like, "This gym is so competitive, it is so like, the energy is great," and, their coaching they have a very highly respected coaching staff, and so I, had to kind of, work my way up and interview and, try to get myself in a position where I was like, "Hey, I've only been coaching for a little while, but I feel like I could fit into this community," and, so ended up essentially applying and got a position at Union Square, and, it's been a great opportunity. That gym is really a phenomenal place.
Hmm. Talk about your coverage of CrossFit for Morning Chalk Up. You've done a wide variety of pieces that I've seen.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that and what your experience has been.
Yeah, no, it's definitely wide breadth of the sport. So I would say when I started, right, the usually I think where folks start in terms of a morning chalk up at least, or maybe in the sport itself, is the community, because you can relate to people and you can talk to people, and affiliates are always open and open to speaking to folks. And so I started really with doing a ton of community pieces. So speaking to different boxes that were running certain fundraisers, or if a box or if an affiliate, had a storm and then they needed some financial assistance. It was like we could write a story about them and talk about their past, and so that's kind of where I started. And then I ended up uh going more into the professional side of the sport and reporting more on professional athletes and talking to different athletes and profiling them and talking about their season and talking about kind of how they have evolved in the sport too. So it's kind of both. It's a community side and it's a professional side. And then I think there's also a side of um, talking about CrossFit, the company, right? And so more so in the last year, I would say we've obviously talked a bit more about, or reported more about, CrossFit as a company, and so those different buckets are kind of where I live in. But I really love writing about the community. It is what makes up this sport,
Mhm.
and so for me, those are kind of like the stories that I would rather write about.
How do ideas come about? Do you pitch the stories? Do your editors tell you what to write? Is it a combination?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination. So we meet 3 times a week, and so we have pitch meetings, and I, am coming in with different ideas, different things, like people, bring different story ideas to me, or I'm, thinking of them on my own just because I'm a coach. I also am an athlete, so I kinda can see the sport in all these different ways, so It's kind of a mix, I would say. It's a bit of both.
And I know that they changed ownership, right? They went to Barbend. So what was that like?
Yeah, yeah. So when I right, yeah. So before, well, when I was hired, yeah, it was not owned by Barbend. And then about 2 years in, Barbend purchased Morning Chalk Up. And to be honest, not a ton has changed. Our editors have editorial ownership over what we do. Barbend's a great company. They've kind of just made it really easy for us. I would say, if anything, it's given us more of a platform. Barbend has um a lot. Obviously there's weightlifting and then there's powerlifting, and so it's given us kind of a bigger audience to look at our work anyway. So I would say it's been a pretty easy transition for me, at least.
Mhm. What
And
are
I'm not an editor, so I don't know. I'm just a writer.
what are any of your pieces stand out as any particular favorites that you covered or did that you really liked?
Yeah, let's see. I would say I'm gonna bucket them. So on the community side, when I had just started writing and I was like coming out of this hole from NBC and like, am I a good writer? Am I even capable of being a writer again? So I interviewed this gentleman whose son had I believe he had committed suicide, and we were doing a memorial workout for them, and it was just a touching moment to interview the father and to talk to him about losing his son, and talking about how doing a memorial WOD was like one of the main fixtures of his healing process. And so that just really humanized CrossFit for me, and how it is a sport that really helps people through some of the toughest times in their lives. And so that was a story that really stuck out to me. I believe he was a member of CrossFit Krypton, the father was.
Oh,
And so that story really stuck out to me as one in the community. And then one in on the side of the sport, I would say, is that I've had an opportunity to interview some of the best of the best. So I've did a long interview with Cole Sager and Noah Olson and uh Bjorg and Carl Goodmanson about how they've been in the sport and have, gone to the games uh 10 years. And so that was a really, really, for me, a really big moment to get to interview some of the best and talk about how they see the sport evolving, how they've trained, how they've evolved in the sport as well. So that was a pretty cool one too.
mm. Do you have a favorite pro CrossFit athlete, male or female?
That's a good question. Um, I really like quiet hard working types. So
Mm.
I would say I admire like a BKG type.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the folks who are just like grinding in the background are really cool, like Alexis Raptis,
Uh-huh.
or I'm trying to think who else. But I mean, like primarily I'm a big Tia Toomey fan. I think she is incredibly talented,
Mhm.
and I admire someone who um can just be a workhorse,
Mhm.
and like no matter what, she's gonna be out there and she's gonna work.
I
And
lo
so I kind of like that.
I love that. So tell me about your assessment of CrossFit as a company. You've seen them for the past couple of years. How are they doing? What would your assessment be
Yeah.
in terms of what they've done over the past couple of years as a HQ, not the affiliates obviously, but HQ?
Yeah. So I believe I started writing in 2022. And so I went to the games in 2023. And so I kind of got to see, uh, I feel like the last year in Madison as the year before everything that obviously happened in 2024. But I think before then, we were kind of, and maybe folks feel differently, but I feel like we were in a really good spot. Like Dave Castro was in manager of sport position. We kind of were getting our flow back, I feel like, in terms of the elite, the community, all these different pieces. And so I feel like at that point in 2023, it was like, okay, we're coming back. Like Dave's here. He had just come back and like started programming for the games again. And people were kind of like, okay, this is the norm. This is where we're at. And then 2024 happened, right? And so everything that happened with Lazar Dukic was just a horrible, horrible, horrible event. Um, but I think the handling of that matter was really not done in the right way for the community. It's not what they needed. It's not what they wanted. And so I feel as though if they want to, if Don Fall or Dave Castro or some of these folks at the top want to stay in these positions, I feel like they need to come out and be a more transparent, right? Like we're seeing this sport start to splinter, I think. And I think we're seeing the company start to splinter because people are losing trust and losing interest in uh keeping with the norm when it's not the norm anymore. Like something really bad happened. And so I think that we need to see some sort of communication from them for folks to be able to air quote move on, right? No one's going to move on from what happened, but to try to get past what happened and come back to CrossFit.
How has your affiliate done over these past couple years in terms of growth, success, uh, membership increase or decrease? And does that relate at all to CrossFit HQ?
That's a good question. Yeah, no, CrossFit Union Square has gone through the trials and tribulations of being an affiliate in Manhattan, right? I mean, rent is incredibly expensive. It is hard to maintain buildings. So we've moved quite a bit since I've been there, right? I've only been a coach there for we're going on 3 years now. And so we've had to move um within that time frame. But I believe that, when I joined, the membership was very high, and I believe it is still high. Um, and it's still, when I joined, we had to have like a wait list for full-time memberships. That's how popular we are. So I don't think it was really shifting, but I do think the interest in doing things like the open or things that involve CrossFit as a company have shifted, if that makes sense. So I think that, we at CrossFit Union Square are trying to, give people an opportunity to do the open if they'd like to, but I feel like there's also an opportunity for our athletes to want to do something else. Like if they want to focus on local competitions, there's an opportunity for that. If they want to do high rock, there's an opportunity for them to go and focus on high rocks training. So I think as an affiliate, we're doing fine. And I think that membership wise, we are, a popular gym. But yeah, I think CrossFit Union Square kind of keeps themselves separate from CrossFit as a company.
I was talking to Aaron Hind, who's the CEO of Fit Aid, and he literally
Yeah.
said there are some affiliates who are affiliated, but not actually putting CrossFit on their name. So they're just calling themselves, you know, so and so strength and conditioning, and they're not putting cross
Mhm.
because they don't feel like CrossFit necessarily adds value to who they are as a gym. Do you feel that way? At least for your affiliate?
Yeah, I think that affiliate owners, I've talked to a lot of affiliate owners, and I think that they make up the bread and butter of their business. I do not think that adding CrossFit to the end of the name really matters that much, other than the fact that if you're Googling and you want a CrossFit gym, you're going to find CrossFit Union Square because it has CrossFit in the name. But I don't think, if CrossFit Union Square dropped CrossFit, that it really would change that much. It's the coaching that makes up that gym. It is the caliber of athletes that make up that gym. So I think that, it's a good question, but I personally, I feel as though it doesn't hold that much stake to keep CrossFit in the name, especially now that it to some has a bad association
Mhm,
adding CrossFit to the name.
mhm.
And I also feel like CrossFit has an exceedingly high or perceived exceedingly high barrier to entry. So when you slap CrossFit onto something, immediately some folks are like, "Oh, I can't do that." Right? You get that all the time. People are like, "I can't do what this girl's doing." And so making it, something X strength and conditioning, to me, it could also be a benefit.
Wow.
So it's a tough call.
How about the programming? What programming do you guys follow? Do you do your own? Do you roll your own programming? Do you follow CAP or something else?
Yeah, no, we follow Jay Adams is our head coach
Yeah.
and he's our programmer. Yeah. So he is a former games athlete and he also is works for the training plan. It's like a European based training program. I believe BKG follows it, and at one point in time Annie Thor's daughter did follow it
Mhm.
or was involved in it. So he is our programmer. His and then personally I follow Jay Adams programming too. So he's our programmer. But it's folks who come in and we get a ton of drop-ins. We're in the middle of Manhattan,
Right.
right? Come in and they love our programming, right? We fill an hour like you would never see, right? It's like a hard lifting segment into a really tough conditioning piece. So we balance it out. We get folks if you're just following class, you're squatting once a week,
Mhm.
you're doing an Olympic lift at least once a week,
Mhm.
and then you're doing some sort of strength training on Friday followed by a workout. So we also Tuesdays and Thursdays are like the longer conditioning pieces. So it's a little bit of both.
Mm. Now, I know you're competing in Wodapalooza in a week or two, next week, right? So, um,
Next week.
yeah, you're part of the teams, right? And what division are you in competing in?
I am. Yeah, no, I'm on a team called Team Union Stronger. With a parentheses around ER because we're that creative. So we have a Team Union Strong, Union Stronger, and then I believe we also have a Team Union Strongest. So we have 6 teams going to Wodapalooza, which is really exciting for our affiliate. But I'm on an RX women's team.
Okay.
So myself, Alyssa Brown, and Taylor Short are my teammates. And we last year did it and we were intermediate. And then this year we actually made the RX division, which is exciting because, we all have full-time jobs and
Mhm.
we have crazy lives.
Mhm.
And so it's a real honor to be able to compete
Mm.
and be representing our gym. And then also just it's nice to obviously,
Mm.
see improvement as an athlete
Yeah.
because it's sometimes really incremental
Mhm.
and really slow.
Mhm.
But then when you do a comp or do a qualifier and you see where you end up, it's hopefully sometimes satisfying, sometimes disappointing.
What
But
does
this
Wa
time it came out on yeah.
what does Wodapalooza do right? Like, you obviously had gone last year, you've have experience with it, you're going back. What is it that they do that, maybe CrossFit could take away from in terms of how they execute their festival or their competition?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've interviewed Dylan Malitsky, one of the organizers of Wodapalooza, from the start and up until now, and he's a really great guy, and he also has a good pulse on what is happening in the sport. And I think what they get right is that they do not take themselves too seriously, yet at the same time are a very serious and one of the most, I would say, coveted competitions of the year for community members and then also for elites. Like, who doesn't want to be in Miami in January, right? So I think it's like a lot of things. I think their location is great. I think that their timing is great for folks who, me included, want to get out of the cold. And so I think that they get it right in terms of also making it a whole 3-day competition. I like that they moved it where elite individuals compete the first 2 days, and then they can also be on a team. So it kinda gives you, as a spectator, an opportunity to see elites for a total of 4 days, which is, like, really fun, and it's also there for fun. So it's just made it a really exciting, fun, um, and, like, easy time. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it's just an easy competition to kinda get to for people. Miami's not that, tough of a trip, and so I think, it's a whole mix, but Dylan has gotten whatever formula he and his team use, they've gotten it right. They do a great job with programming, and I think, um, folks love to be on teams, right? Teams are really fun. And so I think that they also do a good job of programming like the team workouts and then keeping it separate from the elites and kind of just working the whole day. I feel like that's also the key part of Wodapalooza is like, okay, how are we going to segment the day where people get to compete and then they also get to stick around and watch elites. And so they just do a great job of everything. And the vendor village is always really fun and talking to brands. And so it's just a really exciting time
Mm. I,
for them.
I see the workouts. Out of these workouts, which one are you most excited about? Which one are you most scared of? There's race to the top, 3-3-3-4,
Yeah.
warms up, hands down, overhead squat, block party, the trio triplet.
Okay, good question. I would say we just came back from Beacon, New York, because Jay lives and coaches up in Beacon, and they had ropes, and unfortunately at CrossFit Union Square we do not have tall enough ceilings, so we had to go and do rope climbs. So I would say I'm excited. I like rope climbs. I came from a gym in DC that had high ceilings, so I like rope climb. That I guess you know the names better than me. Whatever the one with the rope climb and the box jump overs and
Yes,
the heavy,
it says
the
race to
clean
the top. It's
race to the top.
rope
Yeah.
climbs, box jump overs, 30 inches, I guess, for you guys. And then
Yeah.
cleans at 165. Woo.
I know. Yeah, but though for me, those are like really doable movements. So for we tried it yesterday and I had a lot of fun. So I'm excited for that workout. And then the one I'm least excited about is probably 3334.
Okay.
That the buy-in is just long enough to jack your heart rate, and then you have to go right into these heavy dumbbell movements. A 50-pound dumbbell is not like the easiest thing to move, and so for me that is going to be one where I'm just like holding on for dear life and trying not to let go.
This looks brutal. It's three.
Yeah.
It's 3-3-3-4. So it's 4 rounds, and then 3-3-3 minutes for the first 3, and then 4 minutes for the last one. And each round buy-in at the same time. I guess everyone does 3 V lights heavy dubs. That's a heavy, like a weighted jump rope, I assume.
Yeah, so and they'll probably correct me, but I believe the jump rope itself, I believe the handles are the heavy part, which is interesting.
And then it's
So we'll see. Yeah.
so you haven't tried it yet. You're gonna go and see what.
I haven't. I've used a heavy jump rope like a Zeus
Yeah.
rope
Yeah.
before, but the rope itself is heavy
Yeah.
and the handles aren't that heavy. So I will see. We'll see what happens.
And then it's for the women 400-meter assault row, and then a 400-meter assault run. So one of you guys is doing one of those each, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've worked it out. Yeah. So essentially where you could be strategic.
Right.
Again, it might change on competition day, but if you are a strong runner, I'm a pretty strong runner. I'm doing majority of those rounds running.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of like a strategic workout,
And
I would
then
say.
in the remaining time of each round, it's 50 synchro dumbbell thrusters, 35 dumbbell snatches, 20 synchro, devil press plus thruster for the women 50 pounds. That's insane. Wait, how many? Is it a single dumbbell thruster or is it a double dumbbell thruster?
It's a single.
Oh, okay.
And only 2 people working out at a time. So you do get rest.
Oh, okay.
But it's like not enough. I've tried it we've tried it twice now, and it's does not get any better. But it's definitely fun.
How far can you get through that 50, 35, 20?
I think when we tested it last week, we got 13 devil's press thruster combos.
Woo.
So it's definitely teams will finish that workout, but it's tough. It is tough. You got to move. Yeah.
All right. I can't wait to watch that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one to watch. Yeah.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about, I mean, good luck, but all right. Talk to me a little bit about the future of CrossFit itself. So how do you think, what is your prediction for CrossFit HQ? What's going to happen in your mind's eye, or what possible scenarios do you envision could happen for CrossFit HQ in the future based on what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think to take a step back and to look at what happened in 2024, I mean, everything that happened around the games was a real turning point for the company. I think that they clearly had to go into crisis mode, right? And figure out what to do and what to say. And then this year, I feel, we just saw the rule book for the season this year. We just saw that the entire season is different from last year. There is no semifinals. There is no quarterfinals. It's just the open to semifinals. And so I think that for them this year, it is a real game of just picking up the pieces and trying to just put it back together again in a sense. We've also seen that they announced that the games is going to Albany, New York.
Hmm.
A much different change than years before. And it's also, um, if I'm not wrong, it's only 3 days. So it's also a shortened competition weekend. And so I feel as though they're in a point of rebuilding. Um, but this is also just a personal opinion. I think to rebuild and to keep the same leadership, you have to be open with your community. And I think that there's a lack of openness. It's, Dave Castro went right to doing his week in review. Don Fall is back to going around to seminars and, talking to affiliates. And it's like this elephant in the room of what happened last year. And I think that if there was an ounce of accountability and an ounce of just like taking ownership for what happened, or just an acknowledgement, that people might take that and accept it in some sense, and maybe move forward and be more excited about the open. And so I think for them as a company, it's going to be a transitional year. Obviously, there are folks and affiliates out there who are just going to always support um the open, and because their members like to have something to work towards. So I do understand that they will likely continue and continue on, but I think, you know, a lot of affiliates are also just maybe fed up with the way things have been, and less putting less emphasis on the open this year. So I think that they have to really square with themselves what to do, and really listen to their community, and like I said, be a bit more transparent in the long run. But I guess it'll be an interesting year to see open signups. I know they are down from last year just based off of some numbers that we're talking about in our meeting, and so obviously that could change. But I think that just the world of fitness is changing too. We've seen High Rocks take off in the last couple of years, and a lot of CrossFitters have turned to High Rocks, and so some are stepping away from competitive CrossFit and turning to a more conditioning heavy type training model. So I think the sport is shifting in general.
How do you think the splintering with PFAA and the new competition that competitions that they're sort of engaging in, and the separate organization structure, how do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the creation of the PFAA is a good thing for athletes. I think that they've always needed some sort of organization to protect them and have, some folks backing them up in a situation such as what happened in 2024. But I think that they um will run parallel to something like the World Fitness Project, the new kind of competition coming from Will Morad and
Hmm.
and his team there. So,
Hmm.
I think they'll run parallel. I think that clearly more eyes will be on the PFAA this year, especially with like Brent Fikowski at the helm. I think he is a very, I would say, knowledgeable, smart. People look up to him. So I think that he being at the helm of that, and Bruce is coming around. Um, Him being at the helm of that is important, and I do think that there will be a heavy emphasis on them throughout the competition season for sure.
How do you think CrossFit, what do you think CrossFit needs to do in order to compete? I mean, we've talked about the shortcomings and issues that they've had in
Yeah.
terms of accountability. In terms of driving CrossFit growth for affiliates, I feel like we're not necessarily competing affiliate to affiliate. It's about the F45s or the Orange Theories, or so many of the other type of boutique fitness um,
Mhm.
uh, places out there. Even stuff like Pilates. I know a lot of women are starting to do a lot of Core Fire and these other kind of boutique classes. Is there anything advice that you would give CrossFit in terms of how to be more marketable? Or you already talked about that barrier to entry in terms of athletes feeling like this is too difficult or not for them. What, we all started in CrossFit and none of us were like that awesome of athletes, I think most of us when we started. So how is it that we can sort of overcome that and grow the base of athletes or people interested in doing CrossFit?
Yeah, I think that that is an always evolving question, especially I see it a lot. In Manhattan, you walk down the street, you see an F45, an Orange Theory, like you said, a Pilates studio, a yoga studio, and you're like, how are these places, how are you attracting certain members and how are you keep retaining these members? And I think for CrossFit, and I said this already with the barrier of entry, is making an affiliate separate from CrossFit, like making sure that folks understand that a CrossFit affiliate is absolutely nothing like how an elite athlete trains. Elite athletes today, it is a full-time job. They are doing very high skills. They are training 2 to 3 times a day. And so for folks who are just, doom scrolling the internet and seeing people lifting, a girl lifting 200 pounds over their head, getting away from that and making sure that folks know that at a community level, right, and you also started at a CrossFit gym, that it is a very doable thing, and it is a very, like, modifiable workout to do at all times, and so I think I think it also varies from affiliate to affiliate, but in terms of marketing themselves as a place that is welcoming and a place that isn't, so highly coveted, right? It's a place that everyone can come, and it doesn't matter if you're really great or really bad. And I think that also is foundational to CrossFit, right? When I had those horrible times back in DC when I lost my job, like it didn't matter that I lost my job. I was there working out next to them. They didn't care, right? You're all the same in the middle of a metcon, and so getting back to that idea, I think would be a good thing for affiliates and also realizing that CrossFit is such it's such a lifestyle for obviously I'm someone who drinks the Kool-Aid, so I know that. But I also think that like it is such a lifestyle choice to go to the gym and hurt like that, right? Like it is just such a different thing than any other sport. And I've recently been to a couple Pilates classes, which are very, very hard, but a much different experience, right? So for me, it's getting back to community. It's getting back to the idea that it is an inclusive sport and getting back to just the basics and the fundamentals.
What's your favorite workout or hero WOD that you like to do?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mhm.
People will know this, but DT is my favorite workout. I love barbell cycling and Um, I like a fast workout,
Mm,
and to me, that is a fast, like, mean workout, so
yeah.
that is my favorite.
I wish I could
Yeah.
hang on to
What's
the
yours?
bar longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah. That I always end up dropping, not necessarily because of the weight, but because I just can't hang. I got to work on my grip, I think, on DT. So, but
Yeah, that hook grip,
yeah,
it's a tough one.
yeah,
It's a tough workout,
yeah,
yeah.
I love that one too. Well, so where can people find you if they want to know more about Teaganne Finn? Where do they read your work? What social media handles do you have? How can we keep stay abreast of your accomplishments?
Yeah, yeah, so all our work is published under barbend.com, and then you can go within barbend.com on the homepage, there's a CrossFit, tag, and so you can press that, and that's where all our work is. You could also subscribe to our newsletter and get it to your inbox every day. It is, easy to subscribe. I think there are 2 levels of membership. One is, pretty inexpensive, and then another is an RX version, which is a bit more expensive, but it gives you some premium content. So if we're interviewing different coaches or interviewing folks about analysis or trying to get some topic that's a little deeper, it gives you access to that content. And then I'm really just on Instagram. My handle is tfin94.
Awesome.
Um, and so I post a lot of fitness, a lot of dogs, and I'm posting a lot about our stories and different interviews I'm working on with different writers on our team. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
just there.
That's awesome. Good luck at Wodapalooza. I know you guys are going to crush it, but I'll be checking out how you guys do. And thank you again, Teaganne, for taking the time to talk. I think what you said is super illuminating. It's nice to see someone who who drinks the Kool-Aid, is all in, not just as an athlete, as a coach, but also has great perspective as a writer. I've read so many of your pieces, and I know you probably don't remember. I did see you briefly at 23.2 when you covered it. That was one of the open workouts over at my gym, CrossFit Bison in Midland Park.
Oh, and Bison. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we gave you a hard time coming in just because we were overwhelmed, but then, like, because we weren't letting anyone in, and then I remember, like, we're like, "All right, she's a journalist, so we let you in," because there were so many people who just wanted to come in to watch Vellner and Krennikov throw down on that
Oh,
workout.
yeah. I mean, talk about a community. Bison is a huge community. That was a really fun event. Yeah, no, well, thanks for letting me in.
Yeah. Well, we needed the publicity. I mean, you're the one who was
You
right.
needed it. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, we needed you to write about that, so we really appreciate that. But, thank you again, Teaganne, and, good luck at Wodapalooza.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, no, I'm excited.